Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our workshop on light duty vehicles and the preparedness for the set of rules which will become applicable as of next year, 1st of July. I am Raluca Marian. I'm the Director for EU Advocacy and General Delegate of IRU to the EU, and I will be your host and moderator today. So this is a topic which we would like to kickstart today through this workshop and webinar. It is a topic which has become very, very burning. Why is it burning? Because there are between 1 million and 3 million. There is quite a variation in number because it's very difficult to have very accurate figures on that, of light commercial vehicles that will be subject to unprecedented rules as of next year. So perhaps we hear often complaints from truck operators and truck drivers that there are a lot of rules regulating their professions and their lives, but to some extent they are used to that, but not drivers of light commercial vehicles, because these are drivers like many of us, drivers with B license, so B driving license. So for them, becoming subject to driving and rest time rules, posting of drivers' rules, having tachographs on their vehicles is something absolutely revolutionary. So as IRU and together with our members' national federations, we would like to make sure that that the market will be ready, so that on the 1st of July next year, everybody will be aware of these rules, that tachographs will be installed on all the vehicles performing international operations, and that all this transition will run smoothly. So that's the purpose of, to start this discussion, that's the purpose of this workshop today. Of course, that doesn't mean that after this workshop, all the market will be prepared. So that's just the beginning. And together with our members, we'll prepare a series of other communications and events, all with the purpose to have this market readiness. So the event today will have two main parts. The first main part will be targeted at the general framework, and we will have guests from the European Commission, from the European Labour Authority, but also a transport operator who will share with us how they do it in practice. This is a large transport operators having both heavy-duty vehicles and light commercial vehicles, and they will share with us how they plan to be ready and their drivers to be ready for these new rules. And in the second session, we will go more into the implementation and enforcement, and we'll go into some more technical aspects, including tachographs, and see how this will work in practice. Oleg, I don't know if we have our speaker from the European Commission. Philip just joined. So we have Philip Negreanu Arboreanu. He's the deputy head of unit at DG Move, the unit C1. This is the unit in charge with these sector-specific rules. And I would like to give the floor to Philip for the opening remarks. Philip, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Raluca. Thank you for your introductory remarks. And thank you for the audience present here today for this important workshop. I'll start with a few words about the mobility package, because this is what brings us all together. It has been a groundbreaking moment in the way we organize the road transport sector in the European Union. As you probably feel it, and as you probably know, it has been the largest reform of the internal market for commercial road transport, which took place in 2020. And it includes new market and social rules in our internal market. It also foresees the extension of most of these rules for light commercial vehicles going forward. I think besides the rules that are in place, I think the mobility package is proposing a different way of how we see the organization of road transport, where the three main pillars of the success of road transport in Europe, meaning the social pillar, the market pillar, and the infrastructure pillar, if you want, in a way. They are all touched upon by this package, and it all changed since the mobility package was put in place. Now it's quite clear that for you as stakeholders, as enforcers, as companies, and for us, the Commission, the success of this package depends on how it is enforced, how the enforcement leads to this transformational change of fairness and competitiveness in road transport in the European Union. Um, and now, today, we are discussing, of course, the inclusion of light commercial vehicles in the scope, and the reasoning behind that, by applying driving and rest times rules and the use of tachograph. Uh, and the main reason is to expand the way we saw and the way the co-legislators decided to craft the level playing field within the internal market, and to expand that level playing field also to ensure that these light commercial vehicles, when they are competing in the market, are subject to the same rules as the trucks, but also subject to the same rules and to the same values within the subsector of light commercial vehicles transport. In the market pillar, the new rules for light commercial vehicles have been applying since 2022, such as the rules on cabotage, on obligation to carry on board the vehicle a certified true copy of the community license. And the social pillar of the mobility package extends to light commercial vehicles engaged in international transport in 10 months from now, namely on the 1st of July next year in 2026. And this entails a significant shift in the regulatory framework for drivers and operators using such vehicles. Um, Over the last 5 years, we've seen how the mobility package has been applied. We've seen the new types of market operations that stemmed from the application of the mobility package. And with this knowledge and with the time given by legislators, meaning 6 years for the LCV sector to prepare for this deadline, we are in a position to make sure that the inclusion of LCVs to more rules that will become applicable to them will be smoother based on the knowledge and findings we have from applying these new rules to the trucks. It is clear that we in the Commission, with some of these new rules, such as the obligation for LCVs to have a tachograph installed, we see that it might not be so straightforward or easy to apply and comply with. But we do have the experience of how these rules were enacted and applied for the heavy-duty vehicles. And we see that in the end, with all hurdles over time, now we are at a place for heavy-duty vehicles where these rules apply smoothly, and I mean here the tachograph. So that is why I think today's workshop is a very good opportunity to look into these new rules and to prepare as soon as possible for their application, for you to become aware of the details of all the rules that will start applying as of the 1st of July 2026, which will enable you to take the necessary steps to ensure that both the drivers that will be affected and the operators you work with are adequately trained about the obligations and rules that will be applied. So over the next 10 months, the administrative and practical steps that these new rules entail, both before and after the deadline, to name only a few, the submission of posting declaration in the EU IMI portal, the RTPD, and the implications it carries on your driver's remunerations when engaging in cabotage operations, the posting, I mean, the requirement for companies and drivers to hold tachograph cards, the deployment of the tachographs and the cards. Those are the main parts of these upcoming rules that need to be prepared going forward over these 10 months. So Our hope in C1 in the European Commission is that this workshop will be useful to all of you, but also for us in MOVE to first raise awareness of how the rules will kick in and what will be applicable as of when, so that we can also exchange on the best practices, on the steps that you need to take to prepare for this milestone. And I'm very glad that today, besides my presence, we have Romain Durin and Katarzyna Kuske, who will be also presenting a more deep summary of the rules that will become applicable in a few minutes. And we will remain available for all your questions. I conclude by reminding you what the main statement is. We have the rules. We changed the transport sector for a better functioning, more seamless, more competitive, more fair transport sector in road transport. Now we need to make it a success for LCVs, and enforcement remains key. So your efforts in applying the rules, in embedding the rules in the market and for the operators are the main solution to have a successful mobility package for LCVs. We in DG Move remain available over the next few months until July 2026 to answer any questions you will have and to address the issues that might come up. And we are in constant contact with the technology providers, with enforcers, with companies, with member states to facilitate a smooth entry into force of this part of the mobility package. So with this, I thank you very much for organizing this workshop. Thank you for inviting us to participate, and we are at your disposal for any questions you might have. Thank you very much, dear Raluca. I give back the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Philip. You mentioned some very key words amongst all the very good information and introduction that you provided. And one is partnership, because indeed, in order to make all of this work is not only IRU and our members, the federations, but even your presence today and your colleagues, and also the European Labour Authority, but also the enforcers community. So this is all key to working together is key in order to have a smooth shift to the new rules. So we have the operators, but of course the enforcers also need to know how the rules apply. So and the drivers and our colleagues from the trade unions as well. So it's really indeed a big partnership and a big effort that we have to undertake this in the upcoming months to make sure that everything will work well. And the second key idea that you mentioned, and I would like to stress out, and that's also reflected in the structure of the webinar today, is that there is a legal part, like get to know the rules so that you comply with the rules and you are not sanctioned by the companies and the drivers. But then there is also the technical part, which means vehicles have to physically be equipped with smart tachographs too. And we have already seen with the trucks that this can be a very cumbersome experience from planning, availability, and all of this. So timely awareness of the market and timely work to this end is vital in order to make all of this work. So not only get to know the rules part, but also have the vehicles equipped with what is needed part. So we are now moving into the first session, which, as I anticipated, focuses on the legislative framework in more details, and then we will have speakers from the European Commission. We have the first presentation on the EU legislative framework for LCVs, and this is Romain Durand from also C1. He's a policy officer, and you also mentioned Katarzyna, Philip, so I don't know if it's only Romain or Romain and Katarzyna. Then we will have a presentation on resources available to LCV operators and drivers to prepare. So what is already out there in terms of materials available to understand these rules and to know the rules that will become applicable. And here, this presentation will be given by Ivan Mekinda from the European Labour Authority, the Information and EURES unit. And then the third presentation will be by a company. It will be UPS, and the presentation will be made by Alison Odd, how UPS is doing it in practice. So how do they make sure that their drivers will be ready, and themselves as a company will be ready next year for these rules. So we will hear all these presentations. In the meantime, if you have questions, especially the online participants, because those participating here physically in the room, most of you do not have computers, so you can't do that. But those who are connected to computers, you can already address questions if you have on the presentations in the chat function that is available to you. We will have here someone who will monitor these questions, and when the 3 presentations are over, we will pick up these questions and address them to the speakers. And also at the end of the presentations, you will also have the possibility to address the questions orally, if you want to take the floor. So for the first presentation, I would like to give the floor now to Roman from the European Commission. Roman, the floor is yours. You are muted. Yeah.
Thank you, Raluca. Yeah. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all. Am I sharing my presentation?
It's better, Roman. If you cannot,
okay. No. I can do that.
You can share from your computer.
So just give me 20 seconds.
Roman, will you present alone or with Katarzyna?
I think Katarzyna is not here in the end, so I think I just checked she's not here, so it will be just me.
Okay, we can see the presentation. It's all good.
Yes. Okay. Very good.
Presentation.
Yeah. Voilà, here it is. So good afternoon to all, and thank you for the invitation. So I'm indeed Romain Durand in the Road Transport and Philips unit in DG Move. I'm more specifically responsible for the tachograph legislation, but today I'll give an overview of all of the rules that start to apply on the 1st of July next year for light commercial vehicles, and I'll do my best to address questions you might have today, or otherwise, of course, we will get back to you in writing if we need if there are questions that we need to analyze in more detail. So just to rapidly give the background again, Philip has mentioned some of this in his introductory remark. But so the rules that start applying next July for light commercial vehicles are part of the social pillar now of Mobility Package 1. LCVs are part of this social pillar, and so the deadlines are a bit the last one. So the light commercial vehicles have, let's say, had the most time to adapt to these new rules, which are now in 10 months. But here you see a bit the full timeline of the social pillar of and market pillar of Mobility Package 1 that was adopted back in 2020. And so for light commercial vehicles in international transport, the obligation, the market part, let's say, so the obligation to have a community license and certified true copies on board the vehicle entered into force back in February 2022. And in parallel, of course, Mobility Package 1 was mainly also for heavy duty vehicles. And so since 2020, there has been a progressive incorporation of all the new rules that were agreed back in 2020, and they started applying throughout the last 5 years. And so the posting rules started applying for heavy duty vehicles back in 2022, and there was a full retrofit of smart tachograph in vehicles engaged in heavy-duty vehicles engaged in international transport over the last 2 years, which ended actually just a few days ago with the retrofit of the first version of Smart Tachograph 1 in heavy-duty vehicles in international transport towards Smart Tachograph 2. And so from next July, the driving and rest time rules start to apply to light commercial vehicles, the Smart Tachograph 2 obligation, and posting rules. And I will give a bit more details now on those rules. So first, the driving and rest time rules, of course. So the legal basis for light commercial vehicles to kind of enter this social pillar of mobility package is contained in Regulation 561 of 2006. So this is the driving and rest time rules, which says that from the 1st of July, these vehicles, and so the operators and the operations fall in the scope of the driving and rest time rules and the tachograph legislation. So for driving and rest time rules, it's relatively straightforward. So for operators which have both heavy-duty vehicles and light commercial vehicles, it's very easy because the same rules apply. Or if there are representatives or operators here that have only light commercial vehicles, then here, so I'm not going to go into all of the details of the driving and rest time rules, but of course there are rules on daily driving time, weekly driving time, bi-weekly driving times, breaks during the day, daily rests, and weekly rests. So all of those are contained in Regulation 561 of 2006. There are maximum driving times, minimum rest times. There are certain derogations where, for example, for a weekly rest, weekly rests can be reduced and then compensated later on. So all of this is part of the training that needs to be kind of given to drivers and to undertakings where those rules are not yet known to the operators or drivers. The tachograph rules, so both Philip and Raluca mentioned these. So this is a very practical step that needs to be undertaken. So there are more rules for the tachograph. So the scope of installation for the Smart Tachograph version 2. So the deadline is the 1st of July. So this applies to, of course, EU registered vehicles engaged in international transport. So meaning that the operations that those light commercial vehicles are undertaking, let's say from the first operation, are between at least two member states of the European Union, and that those operations are for hire or reward, so own account. And there again, you can find in the legal text that for light commercial vehicles this remains exempt. The obligation from the 1st of July applies not only to newly registered light commercial vehicles, meaning so light commercial vehicles that register that are being sold and being on the roads for the first time from the 1st of July, but also for any light commercial vehicle which is currently on the roads, however old it is, however recent or old it is. That vehicle, if it continues to be engaged in international transport after the 1st of July next year, then a smart tachograph needs to be installed by the 1st of July next year. What this means as well is that drivers and operators also, so a smart tachograph works with cards. So the driver card has a personalized card, and that card needs to be inserted when driving in the tachograph. And so that means that drivers of such vehicles need to have their driver card, and operators need their company cards to download data on a regular basis from the tachograph. So all of this is also this is a bit what's behind, is administrative steps towards the national authorities for the cards, to request those cards, to the workshops. We have accredited workshops in each member state that are allowed to install the tachograph in the vehicle. And so all of this needs to be done before the 1st of July. In terms of supply of tachograph, there are to date 2 companies that have a type approved smart tachograph version 2. These are what we refer to as Continental, or you will also hear VDO, and Stone Ridge Electronics. And so here you find on one of the Commission websites the status of the companies that have type approved smart tachographs. The novelty, so there is no specific smart tachograph version 2 for light commercial vehicles. Of course, many vehicles might not have been designed to have a smart tachograph, and here, so this is where what Philip was saying earlier, that we understand that there can be challenges in the installation into some vehicles of smart tachograph version 2, because those vehicles were not designed as such. So there is an adapter that exists for smart tachograph to be installed in light commercial vehicles, but here again we are not saying that it will be extremely smooth. There may be practical issues in workshops, but for us to be aware of any issues and to kind of exchange solutions, best practices, these kinds of installations, we really encourage you to start early, so that it is not at the last minute, 2 weeks before the deadline, that workshops will not be able to deal with the mass of light commercial vehicles that will need to be retrofitted. And then I conclude by the posting rules. So posting rules posting is when a driver is simply said considered to be working in a member state other than the member state of establishment of the company. And so this in road transport, we define posting situations where the driver is entitled, where the remuneration is higher in the host member state, is higher than in the or more advantageous, let's say, than in the member state of establishments, that the driver is entitled to that remuneration. And for that, it depends on the type of operation which the driver is engaged with. And so here again, I'm not, maybe some of the later presentations will dive a bit more into the detail, but basically we are looking at what in road transport we call cabotage or cross-trade operations. So those, if a light commercial vehicle from the 1st of July is engaged in cabotage or cross-trade, then that will be considered a posting situation in which the same rules as for heavy-duty vehicles apply, meaning posting declarations need to be submitted before the start of the journey, and then the adequate remuneration be paid later on. While bilateral transport or transit remains is not considered to be a posting situation. We have several questions and answers on posting of drivers. We will also share, of course, the presentation with all the links to these commissions, both to the regulations and to the questions and answers, which are more informal documents of the Commission services that clarify certain legal provisions for you to dive into. Voilà, so that's all I'm going to say for the time being. I'm happy to answer your questions, of course. So the various sets of rules that start to apply, I've mentioned. So the driving and rest time rules is Regulation 561 of 2006. Posting of drivers is the Directive 2020/1057, and the tachograph rules is the regulation 165 of 2014. And then, of course, well, the market, I did not talk about the market rules because these have started applying some years ago now as well for light commercial vehicles, but the references are here as well. And then, as I just mentioned, the questions and answers, we have various sets of questions and answers, which are also available on the Commission website. That's it for me for now, and so back to you, Marika. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roman. In the meantime, we are having a lot of questions and answers started also populating the chat, but we would reiterate, I would say, in the discussion, all these themes, because it's important. Not everybody is following the chat, so I think it's important that we'll pick up this towards the end. And I can already foresee, Roman and Philip, if you are still here, because there are so many questions and some are interesting questions. And I even hear that member states have different views on the answers. I can foresee some nice letter that you may receive at some point in time asking for official clarifications from the Commission and official questions and answers on the Commission's website on this, specifically for LCVs. But let us move further. As I promised, we'll take all the questions and answers after the three presentations. And we are now moving to the European Labour Authority, and Ivan Mekinda is talking about the resources already available. Ivan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me just share the screen. Okay. Could you just please let me know if you can see it?
Not yet, but now, yes, we can see it. All good.
Okay, perfect. So, thank you once again.
Yeah, presentation. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So, thank you and a warm welcome from Bratislava. My name is Ivan Mekinda, and I work as an information expert in the information and services sector here in ELA. It is my pleasure to deliver this presentation with a short overview of what European Labour Authority, or short ELA, is, and why we are relevant for drivers, operators, and social partners engaged in international road transport, and what practical resource we are offering in this area. When it comes to the general context of the presentation, let me first start with saying a couple of words about ELA. ELA is one of the newest EU agencies, and we are a so-called supervisory and implementing authority located in Bratislava, in Slovakia. And we were founded only in 2019 with the goal of facilitating labor mobility, like, for example, the possibility for light commercial vehicles operators and their drivers to offer their services EU-wide. That is an example of the labor mobility. We make sure as ELA that the European Union rules on labor mobility are applied. We always say in a fair, in a simple, and in an effective way to help strengthen fairness and trust in what I believe is our most precious good, and that is the EU internal market. As you can see from the slide, we do this from several tasks. These are the main areas of work at ELA. It's the facilitation of access to information, where the main goal is to facilitate access to information and services. We focus on improving knowledge and understanding of information needs, and we organize or participate in the events like this one. We produce information materials like flyers and videos, and I will tell you where to find those in a second. In addition to that, we also support cooperation and information exchange between member states and other stakeholders. Aim of it is to foster collaboration and strengthen networks for cross-border cooperation in the application and enforcement of labor mobility rules. ELA is also dedicated to carrying out analysis and risk assessment on various issues connected to cross-border labor mobility, as well as to enforcement topics, which aims to enhancing cross-border enforcement of labor mobility regulations. With that, please let me also mention the tasks which are related to five main thematic areas, which fall under the ELA's remit. And those are, as you can see, free movement of workers, tackling undeclared work, posting of workers, coordination of social security systems, and probably most relevant for today's presentation, topics related to social aspects of international road transport. Let me move more into the direction of the content. So let me briefly present you what is it that we do here in the information sector when it comes to road transport topic. We, for example, organize road transport information events, so-called road shows. They can be either on-site or online in different EU member states. And since they are organized from the information sector, they will always target drivers, operators, and or social partners and cover different aspects of labor mobility and road transport. One aspect can be, for example, the rules pertaining to mobility package 1. We are also involved in developing thematic campaigns. Example of that is our campaign called Road to Fair Transport. It consists of several campaign materials, such as videos, leaflets, infographics, posters, and other resources which are free of charge and available in many different EU languages and a couple of third country languages. And we also review national websites and EU portals for examples on the rules related to posting of drivers. I would like now to acquaint you with a couple of very practice-oriented resources which can help you understand the rules of Mobility Package 1. I will not go into too many details since I understand this presentation will be shared with you, but instead just provide you with basic information on where you can find relevant resources and how you can access them. One of those resources are flyers about driving and rest time rules and posting, which are available in 35 languages, and they can be downloaded free of charge on our website. I have linked the logos that you can see or the pictures you can see with the website addresses. So once you receive the presentation, you just need to click on the pictures and it will guide you automatically to where you can download all these materials. Your Euro portal is the next thing I would like to mention. By clicking on the link with web address, you will be led to the EU rules for working in road transport. This is also a very important resource for us since it gives you details about all relevant aspects of the Mobility Package 1 rules. You can see on the left-hand side the different topics ranging from driving and rest times, use of the tachograph, posting, and information on the minimum wage. That is very relevant because it applies to posted drivers. The next resource I would like to share with you is our ELA website, and it has a special section on the social aspects of international road transport. On the slide, you can see how to navigate to the relevant topic. On our website, we make available information on the legal background of the provisions enforced in the road transport sector. And as you can see here, the legal framework consists of several directives and regulations. The website that you see here will also guide you to the practical information material related to road transport, such as, for instance, recordings of trainings and information sessions from some of our previous online events. On this slide, you can see how you can also navigate to the landing page of Road to Fair Transport campaign that I mentioned earlier. On this web page, you can find flyers or the leaflets, videos, and the rest of the information materials I have spoken about earlier, covering topics relevant to social aspects of international road transport. Another very important resource is the official information website of the European Commission on Mobility Package 1. There you can find everything from definitions and explanations to specifications on the applicable European rules. And there is also a very comprehensive and good FAQ section, which Roman already mentioned, with answers to some very relevant questions. So it's worth checking this website and all its content as well. This is something I would like to show you because I know it's a very pressing issue, especially for the operators. It's very difficult to find skilled workers, and it might be interesting for you to know that ELA also hosts EURES, which is the European Employment Service. It's a cooperation network designed to facilitate the free movement of workers within the EU member states, including Switzerland, Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway. And it helps people find jobs, and it helps employers find workers across Europe. Each year, EURES publishes a report on labor surpluses and shortages, and the report for 2024 was recently published. What makes it potentially interesting for you is the fact that this edition has an in-depth focus on the transportation sector. So please visit the EURES portal if you would like to find out more on this topic. And for the next couple of slides, they are dedicated to resources that will soon be available and which are relevant for LCV drivers and the operators. As you remember, I did mention that one of the activities that we do are the thematic campaigns. Therefore, I'm happy to announce that at the moment we are finalizing information and awareness raising campaign aimed at LCVs drivers and the operators, with a focus on rules applicable to LCVs as of 1st July 2026. Campaign will be focused around 3 main topics. So driving and rest time rules, covering rules such as daily and weekly rest periods, breaks and driving time, rules related to posting of drivers engaged in international road transport, and use of smart tachographs or so-called G2V2 devices. The main goal of the campaign is to equip drivers and the operators of the light commercial vehicles engaged in international goods transport or cabotage operations with clear and practical information about their key rights and responsibilities. These relate to the social aspects of international road transport as outlined in Mobility Package 1, which comes into force, as previously mentioned, at the start of the second half of the next year. In order to achieve that, campaign will consist of several outputs or communication tools, such as social media posts, which will be published on ELA's social media channels, as well as various other digital platforms. In addition to that, new information leaflet for LCV drivers will be created, and it will be available in many different EU languages and a couple of third country languages as well. And as such, will contribute to already existing information leaflets developed within the previously mentioned Road to Fair Transport campaign. Within the campaign, we will also create practical information posters, each of them containing relevant key message. And we will also create a dedicated campaign landing page on ELA website, which will serve as main source page on which all of this mentioned information material could be found. When it comes to the question of when these materials will be available, we can announce that the campaign will be launched at the beginning of November, and it will last for 6 weeks. Since main campaign approach will be focused on delivering relevant key messages to relevant audience, or to be more precise to you in this case, we would like to invite you to follow posts on ELA's social media channels during that period. Please note that links to ELA social media channels can be found at the bottom of ELA website, as shown on this picture. On top of that, as already mentioned, dedicated campaign landing page will be created on ELA website, and therefore we would like to invite you to visit this as well. In addition to campaign, we are also planning on organizing a dedicated webinar in December on the topic of upcoming regulatory change affecting LCVs. As with the campaign, webinar will be organized for LCV drivers and operators engaged in international and cross-border transport of goods or cabotage. It will cover the same topics as the campaign. And as you can see on the slide, webinar will be delivered in English, and expected duration is around an hour and a half. We would like to kindly invite you to follow events section on ELA website, which you can see on the picture, for more information on exact date and time of the webinar, which will be published in coming weeks. In case you will not be able to follow the webinar during the live stream, please note that the recording will be made available on ELA's YouTube channel. And with this slide, actually, we've reached the end of this presentation. On the screen, you can also find contact details in case you would like to get in touch with us, as well as get the web address of ELA's website. Thank you all for listening, and I suppose that we going back to IRU.
Thank you very much, Ivan, and definitely your presentation is very resourceful. So, and I'm sure that not everybody could remember everything which is in. So it's just a confirmation again on my side that all presentations today will be shared with the participants. So if you didn't write down or you can't remember everything that Ivan shared in terms of resources, don't worry, you will receive his presentation. Before moving to that, so you don't need to upload it yet. So before moving to UPS, because there are so many questions that have already been asked on the chat, and because UPS will change a bit the perspective, because we will move from the legislator and resources available and what the law goes about into how a transport operator intends to is planning to implement and make all of this happen. I would like to first give the opportunity of some questions and answers, and there is an additional topic which I don't know if we have received questions on that, but although it is not one piece of legislation which will become applicable next year, because it is already applicable, and that's the cabotage rules. I think it is important in all the webinars and preparations of the market to insist also on the cabotage rules, cooling off period and everything, because they have been applicable so far, but there was no tachograph. So now with the equipment of the vehicles with the tachograph, it will become much more obvious on how these transport operators apply the rules or not. So we feel that there will be a lot of interest in the market to understand those kind of rules as well, because the enforcement will definitely become more important on those topics. So I would like to ask my colleagues who checked the questions in the chat to pick some of the questions. And as I said, the questions are so numerous that it becomes quite obvious that there will be a need for an official clarification on this law. And because we're talking about resources, before giving the floor to my colleagues to ask the questions, perhaps just to complement Ivan and the resources available from ELA, I would just like to mention that IRU has also built a website, a specific website for the mobility package 1, where there is a lot of information compiled on driving and rest time rules, market access, posting of drivers. Oleg will share the screen with you so you can see it, and then when we share the materials with you, you'll also see the link to this IRU website. And on this website, we compiled everything, all official clarifications we received from the Commission, even Court of Justice judgments on specific items. And it can be very easily accessed on the internet, on Google. If you just type IRU and Mobility Package 1, you will get access to this one. And we plan creating a specific section on LCVs, but it's not there yet, but obviously the rules are the same, so you can already find answers to many of the questions, but we will have a specific one on LCVs. So Oleg or Stasha, who would like to read some of the questions?
Let me start myself.
Yes.
Peter, because Peter from Denmark, who is one of the most known enforcer, he is asking a specific question of what international means, because of course we can have cases which are a little bit limit. And Peter, you can raise the question in the meantime. Be ready. I see questions also related to CIPSI in France, and when the LCVs will become up, the posting rules will become applicable, whether the CIPSI will be relevant. My answer immediately is no. As soon as LCVs are under the posting, then you have to start creating profiles on the posting website and start providing declarations there. But of course, as I said, the PCA related from the UK questions and those specific questions, we need to answer them one by one, as we did with the previous questions. So I suggest, because I don't think we'll have time to answer these questions now that are raised, but please raise them, and then out of these record, we'll create actually the
Oleg, some of them we can. So
sure.
out of
Peter
this
was about to raise this question, which is very specific, and I think DigiMove has an answer.
Yes. Peter, the floor is yours.
Okay. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sure.
Thank you. Thank you for the floor. And
yeah, Oleg already did brief, and just introduce yourself and then ask the question, please.
Yeah, okay. My name is Peter Steen Clausen. I'm working at the Danish National Police, actually. And well, this is an important topic from the 1st of July. And since the LCV vehicles have never been had an obligation to have a tachograph, so this is a whole new situation for drivers and for the industry. So for the legislation part, I have actually one question, because I was looking into to the wording of the 165 and the 561, and if you take the difference between these two things, then we have the retrofit situation with the HCV vehicles, and that is the retrofit of the tachograph that says if a vehicle is operating in another member state than the member state of establishment, then you have to have a smart tachograph installed, and that is from the 18th of August this year. So that is pretty clear. So for the other part, the LCVs, the wording of the 561 suddenly says something about the international transport instead of when a vehicle is operating in another member state than the member state of the establishment. So I think for the first part is my question, the definition of the international transport, I think that's really important that we have a clear definition for that part. So I need that one. The one place where I can only find something similar is in the 1072/2009 regulation, where there is a definition of international transport. And in relation to that, my question is also, is there a usable definition of the international transport that actually also could be used for this specific topic with the LCVs? That is one of my questions. And the other question related to this issue is actually the specific situation. We have a situation in Denmark where you can start up in the member state of establishment that is Denmark, and you can go through Sweden, and you can end up the journey actually in Bornholm, that is an island located below Sweden. So you end up the transport operation actually also in Denmark. And now we're talking about cross-border situations. So I think the main issue is that you always have to have a tachograph installed in an LCV when you cross a border. But here you're also talking about starting up in a member state of establishment and end up the journey in the member state of establishment. So I think we're only talking about transit and no operation whatsoever, just transit and from the member state of establishment and ends up in the member state of establishment. So that was actually my questions.
Thank you, Peter. And perhaps Romain would like to reply, but I just wanted to just say that my neighbor here, who happens to be a top expert also on this topic, Eric, from TLN in the Netherlands, and Eric, you will have a presentation later, yeah. I think, also during this workshop. He said that he received exactly the same question from a member, because it's also common in the Netherlands to cross another country and end up still in the Netherlands. And interestingly enough, it seems that the opinion of the Dutch enforcers and the opinion of the German enforcers is different on the topic. But happy to hear, Romain. So, definition of international transport and specific situation when there is just transit through another country and transport starts and ends in the same country.
Thank you, Peter and Raluca. I see we start with the hardest questions. That doesn't make my life easier. There are lots of other questions there which I'm happy to answer to. This one is not the easiest one. I mean, so here I have to start with a disclaimer, unfortunately, so you're not going to like it. We're really now in the interpretation of the law, okay? And so if you ask the question to DG Move in the last 5 years, when it's a question on interpretation of EU law, we always have this disclaimer that we are not fully entitled to interpret union law, and that only the Court of Justice can do that. Nevertheless, we've been working on this question because we have, of course, received it as well for the retrofit obligation for heavy-duty vehicles. That's clear. So what we do is that we see this in the context of the objective of these rules. Okay, the objective of these rules is not to add an additional burden for nothing on operators, on drivers. Okay, these rules have been established to ensure a level playing field between operators that are potentially in competition among themselves. Okay, and here the objective is the same for between LCVs and heavy duty vehicles, is competition in international transport between member states of the European Union. So to answer the case either directly or indirectly of of Peter, where a vehicle is engaged exclusively in domestic transport. There are such cases as well, I think, in certain places of the Austrian-German border. It happens at the Dutch border. Our interpretation is that these obligations are not made for vehicles operators who are engaged exclusively in domestic transport. We understand that this happens in very targeted areas in the European Union, very, very specific areas where there's maybe one highway or one ferry on a few kilometers or a few tens of kilometers. Okay, what we also encourage is that where you've identified such situations, that you kind of reach out as well to the national authorities to say to see their interpretations, whether there's an agreement on the interpretation there, and that, well, Raluca has mentioned a disagreement in interpretation. In that case, we're happy to intervene and we're happy to give our interpretation. But again, for heavy-duty vehicles, our interpretation has been that operating in member states other than member state of registration means that there's transport operation taking place, that where vehicles are engaged exclusively in domestic transport, then these retrofit obligations do not apply to them. And from the moment that there's one first loading or unloading operation, then these rules enter into force from that moment on. I understand that in terms of enforcement, that also raises a number of questions, but so I think that's also why it's good to hear different views. But that's our interpretation until now.
Okay, thank you, Roman. There is just one very quick one which I heard, and because it was already on your slide actually, Roman, so I think this one you can finish in 5 seconds, which was if the LCVs which are operating on own accounts, so basically those vehicles that do operations for a manufacturer, or if they fall under the rules. And I think it was on one of your slides, so you can just say yes or no. I mean,
yes, I've taken note of a few questions that I can maybe, if you like, I try to address as many. I went through them in order, so I will stop at some point, because then there are a lot. It's true.
Yeah.
But I noted.
Because then we have to
own account.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On own account, so this is an exception. So yes, the answer is yes, own account is exempt, and the exact legal exemption is in Article 3, paragraph HA of Regulation 561/2006. So the exemption is for own accounts of vehicles 2.5 to 3.5 tons, where driving is not the main activity of the driver. So that's the exemption. There's a question as well in the chat on TCA, Trade and Cooperation Agreement. The same wording is in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. So both the deadline of 1st of July 2026 and the own account exemption for, so that is also, I've had a look, it's point H of Article 1, paragraph 4 of Section 2 of Part B of Annex 31. Voila, if anyone wants to go and check. There was a question on the 56 days of recording. The answer to that one is also yes. We encourage smart tachograph to be installed as early as possible, because indeed from 1st of July 2026, the whole of Regulation 165, so the tachograph regulation, starts to apply, meaning that the 56 days. Sorry for those who don't know, the enforcers at the roadside for heavy duty vehicles are, since the beginning of this year, allowed to check at least the last 56 days of activities of the driver. So this is a provision in the tachograph regulation, and so this means that from the 1st of July 2026, this also applies to light commercial vehicles. in theory, the smart tachograph 2, if you have a smart tachograph 2, there's no need to worry about this provision. It's done automatically, and there's enough capacity in the smart tachograph to record in 99.99% of the cases much more than 56 days of records. And then I think there was a question as well. This was where I ended, from Latvia on ATR. Indeed, so here we are only talking about EU registered vehicles, and of course the corresponding let's say framework for third countries, non-EU countries, is the ATR. The ATR does not contain, is not aligned, let's say, with EU legislation as per Mobility Package 1. So therefore, light commercial vehicles registered in third countries do not have this obligation. And just to know that the EU has proposed, actually just a few weeks ago, to align the ATR with EU legislation in that respect. So to include as well light commercial vehicles within the scope of the ATR. And so that proposal has been made to Geneva a few weeks ago. You can find it on the UN website. I can also share that link with IRU just after. Of course, that's another topic, because there we need the unanimity of 52 countries to have that included, adopted in the ATR. Voilà, that's a batch of questions. That's where I managed to go through to the chat. So back to you, Raluca.
I think thank you, Roman. That's very good that you already went through several questions, and I think it's time then to move on to UPS. And if there is still time at the end of the of all the three interventions, so after UPS, we can still take some questions. There may be also questions for UPS. So I would like now to give the floor to Alison Alt from UPS to tell us how UPS is planning all of this in order to be compliant and ready for the 1st of July next year deadline.
Excellent. Thanks, Raluca. I just want to make sure you all can see my screen, because I'm not seeing it on my view.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, in full screen. Perfect. Okay, so thanks very much, Raluca. My name's Alison Alds, and I'm a public affairs manager at UPS. So it's a real pleasure to join you all here today, and many thanks to IRU, CORTE, and ELA for hosting this very timely workshop. So I guess in terms of agenda, I'm here to show you how we're preparing for the new tachograph obligations coming in July 2026. I think it's first helpful to give you a bit of background on UPS's express business and how it works, and then where the light commercial vehicle fits into that. And this context will show how these vehicles are then affected by these new rules, and ultimately how we're preparing to comply. But before we dive in, just to give you a bit of background on UPS. So we were founded in 1907 in Seattle. We started as a very small messenger service where we were making deliveries on bikes. We've since evolved into a global logistics company with operations in over 220 territories and countries across the globe. Our European expansion was first in 1976 in Germany. Today, UPS employs over 490,000 UPSers around the world, and 48,000 of which are based here in Europe. And we have a total of over 400 operating facilities across the continent. So just a bit of background on UPS and what we do. So let me explain to you our express business, how it works, and how we make next day delivery possible. This also will provide the use case for light commercial vehicles versus those heavy duty vehicles. So in express business, the goal is to pick up a shipment from a customer as late as possible in the afternoon and have it delivered to the consignee the next morning, often before a particular hour. So to achieve this, we rely, of course, on a range of vehicles, both heavy duty and light commercial vehicles, aircraft, and a strategic hub and spoke network. So as a general rule, if we're traveling long distance, so that being over 400 kilometers, we'll use a plane because we can rely on air to cover those distances, typically overnight. Whereas we use, for under 400 kilometers, the heavy duty vehicle. So to walk you through briefly the characteristics of an express shipment, this diagram here to the right. So in the late afternoon, UPS will, using a package car or that light commercial vehicle, will pick up shipments from multiple customers in the same area, so consolidation. Those shipments are then taken to a local station where they're sorted and separated based on their destination. From there, if the parcel is staying within that region, it may go directly to another local center for delivery. But if it's headed further, it moves on to the country gateway where the export clearance takes place. Next, the shipment from many gateways are consolidated and transported to our main European hub in Cologne. So this is really the heart of our operations in Europe. Parcels arrive there at night, they're unloaded, they're sorted at a high speed, and they're directed towards the right outbound plane or truck. Overnight, shipments fly or travel by long-haul truck to their destination country. When they arrive in the early morning, they pass through the inbound gateway where import procedures are handled. And then they're moved to the local distribution center near the consignee, and there they're sorted one final time, and that last mile delivery takes place. So I think it's important to kind of emphasize that the advantages of this hub and spoke model. So it assures efficiency in that our trucks don't drive long distances, half empty. So if we have a truck from Brussels to Paris, we'll drop its load, reload, and return full. It also helps ensure reliability. So by centralizing our operations in Cologne, we can control the timing, fill every truck and plane, and make sure our cutoff times are met. But this is where the light commercial vehicles come in. And this is where we need, this is when we need flexibility, is when these vehicles come in. So imagine we have a large scale customer with a shipment that just misses the normal truck off time in Brussels, but still needs to catch a flight in Cologne. In that case, we might deploy a Sprinter van, so that 3.5 ton, the light commercial vehicle that can move faster and still meet that deadline. So we don't use the Sprinter vehicle to circumvent, driving and rest requirements. We use them to keep our network reliable by ensuring that those time critical shipments can reach our Cologne hub on schedule. So here's just a glimpse at our roadmap to give you a sense of our EU feeder network and a sense of scale. So UPS operates over 8,500 UPS owned vehicles in Europe alone. So we're supported, of course, by a major network of subcontractors. We have over 14,500 subcontractor vehicles in that network. Interestingly, the majority of those subcontractors have less than 10 vehicles in their fleet, meaning majority of our subcontractors are SMEs. If we look at the UPS air network, we see kind of how expansive this network is. Of course, at its center, as I mentioned before, is our Cologne hub. And this is really the core of our operations. And it's our largest operations outside of the US. So every major connection in Europe flows in and out of this hub. So looking at July 2026 and beyond and how this all fits together. So of course, as you know, as of the 1st July 2026, road freight vehicles between 2.5 and 3.5 tons operating internationally in the EU must be fitted with the version 2 of the smart tachographs, and then comply with the EU driving and rest time rules, as well as the less specialist on posting of drivers, which has been touched on or explained in the previous presentations. So for UPS, this obligation is very clear. And we believe we're well prepared for the rollout of the G2 V2 in our light commercial vehicle fleet. Importantly, we were able to gain some valuable experience in Germany, where smaller vehicles were subject or are subject to national time registration rules. So their drivers have to log every activity, and let's say they're making over 120 stops in a day when they're working in like dense city centers. This can prove extremely burdensome or time consuming for them. So rather than burden our drivers with manual logbooks, we decided early on to make the decision to equip these vehicles with tachographs even before it was mandatory. So this early decision has given us really, real hands-on experience with tachographs in light commercial vehicles and puts us in a stronger position to comply with these new rules. So this means, we understand how to deploy them and how to integrate them into our day-to-day operations. But importantly, smaller operators like SMEs, they often don't have, the same resources as larger companies to follow legislative changes in the same detail or to prepare well in advance. This, of course, doesn't mean they don't want to comply. It just means they might need a little bit more support. And at UPS, as I mentioned, we're working with over 14,000 subcontractors across Europe. So we see that it's our responsibility, the onus is on us to inform our subcontractors early on, giving them adequate time and leeway to comply with these new rules. And we spread this message through, our procurement teams who are on the ground, who are working directly and in direct contact with our subcontractors and our partners. And then again, we're able to draw on this experience we had in Germany as well in complying with these new rules. So to conclude, this makes, today's webinar extremely timely and relevant. Clear guidance and training is essential to help all fleets make the transition, regardless of size. And large operators like UPS, as well as enforcement agencies and industry bodies, all have an important role to play. And again, really emphasizing this working together is a key here. And we see that as our role in working together to ensure that this goes as smoothly as possible for our subcontractors. I think it's also important to note that this time we need to ensure not only the supply of the tachographs, but also that the installation capacity are sufficient to meet the demand ahead of the deadline. So looking not only at the number available, but also the installation capacity to have these tachographs retrofitted. So yeah, that concludes my remarks. Many thanks for having me here today and hearing UPS perspective, and thanks again.
Thank you very much, Alison. And now I see already you got some applauses from Italy, Pierre Salvati. So perhaps also some questions, because now the floor is open for questions. We already got the first part of the questions, but now we still have some time available until we will move to the next session, to the session 2 of the workshop, which will focus more on the implementation. So are there any questions? I know we already have in the chat on the rules. Are there any questions for Alison as well? And also we can pick some more questions from the chat. And you can also, just a reminder, you can also address your questions directly. If you raise your hand, we can give you the floor. But in that case, I would just kindly ask you to limit the time to address the question to 30 seconds. So
there are no questions to Alison, I see, but there are a couple of questions from Ray. But they are very basic questions, and they can be answered. The driver attestation form, but Ray, you can raise them yourself probably. You have to raise the 2 or 3 questions. And then Jan also raised about the ECMT and this.
Oleg, I suggest the questions which were put in the chat, you can just read them. Read some questions, and then either us or Romain can reply to the questions. I think it goes a little bit faster so we can get more questions. But if there are hands which are raised, we are happy to get the hands, but otherwise just go through the
question is, does the fitment as part of the use of logbooks in France? Surely now those international vehicles that are now subject to the driving and rest time rules, they have to use the tachograph, so they don't need to use the logbooks any longer. Then there was another one. Probably. The driver attestation
you need to
form.
speak louder or so because Ray can't hear you.
The driver attestation form doesn't anything change. It is there. It can be used by the operators. The enforcers have to accept it, but they are not actually required to require it mandatorily. So that's and it is applicable. Everything that is in 561 is applicable to LCVs.
Okay.
There was also a question about the sleeping daily rest, I think, in the LCV in France. Because now it's forbidden to sleep in the LCV during a daily rest, if I'm correct, that is the question. But how is that after the 1st of July? Because in a high duty vehicle, you have a what is called suitable sleeping place. That was in the regulation in the past. But how is that after the 1st of July? So can you sleep in the LCV after the 1st of July?
Everywhere.
In France especially, everywhere.
No, everywhere.
Yeah.
Because France already has rules on that, national rules. But the question is, as of 1st of July, when these rules become European rules and not only rules in France, national rules, the question is, can the facilities of an LCV be considered adequate for the purpose of driver sleeping in the cabin?
To answer
Just two questions, because this is not one question. One is for France, especially for France. If they lift the prohibition for LCVs, and another question is: are allowed drivers of LCVs spend daily or reduced weekly rest in the vehicle? The vehicle is equipped with.
Let us ask Roman to try to interpret this question. But it seems that there will be more of these questions already answered in a presentation that we will have later. But we can hear Roman very briefly on this, if you would like, Roman, to give an interpretation.
I mean, what I can say is that from the 1st of July 2026, then the ban to take the regular weekly rest in the cabin is that obligation is contained in Regulation 561. So it applies as well to light commercial vehicles in international transport.
Yeah.
There was a hand raised, I saw, from Hans there. If you want to take the floor.
Yes, thank you. I had the same answer as Romain said. I'm so very happy that Romain is here so he can answer the more difficult questions on the 561. But I think we come back on
exactly.
the issues.
Presentation yeah, sure. Any other burning question now, or shall we move on? No? Then we move on to the second session, implementing and enforcing the new rules. And actually, Hans, you can keep your mic unmuted because you are going to present first. So Hans Dreyer, he's from CORTE and former, which is I'm sure most of you know, but for those who don't know, is an organization representing enforcers, but also IRU and DGF as social partners who are part of this organization. And Hans is a former road transport inspector in the Netherlands. Hans will talk about the last generation of the tachographs, the version 2, and the driving and rest time rules, and what are the basics that we must know. Hans, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. And may I ask Oleg to present the presentation?
And then start, and then I'll in the meantime I'll.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's not this one.
No, I know this one. It will come. Now it's coming, Hans.
Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. Yes, what I said, my name is Hans Dreyer, and I'm a former senior inspector of the Dutch Traffic Inspectorate. And I'd like to say a few things about the basic rules for the LCVs after July 26. Next slide, please. Now here, Romain said something about what is the new obligation for the LCVs as from July 2026. And because of the time, I'd like to skip this slide and go to the next one. Yes, the objectives of this regulation, what do they actually say? Support fair competition, protect working conditions of drivers, and contribute to road safety. Ensure that drivers get enough rest and have sufficient breaks. Sorry, can you go back one, Oleg? Have sufficient breaks and prescribes limits for driving time for a day, a week, 2 weeks, and guarantee rest times in a day, a week, and 2 weeks. Next slide, please. So that's where I like to talk with you a little bit about breaks, about daily driving and resting times, about weekly driving and rest times, about 2 weekly driving and rest times. Now, first of all, what is driving time? I heard people say sometimes if you are in a traffic jam and you have to drive and you stop a minute and you drive again and you stop a minute. The driving time is very clear. It's rolling of the wheels and ignition on within and outside the EU. So it's driving time is the rolling of the wheels. And what does rest time means then? The driver can freely dispose of his or her time. That means no obligation towards the company. So driving time and rest time, actually what I should say is look in Article 4, there you find the definitions, and sometimes the definitions are not, or the definitions are clear, but the articles are not that clear. Next slide. So for the break, a break of 45 minutes is required after 4.5 hours driving. And here it is say 4.5 hours driving. That could be that the period of driving could be much more than 4.5 hours. But after 4.5 hours of driving, you should take 45 minutes of break. And this break of 45 minutes may also be split in a first break of 50 minutes at least, and a second one of 30 minutes. So let's go a little bit further on this one. Next slide, please. So here you have 2 examples. First you see drive 4.5 hours, then a break of 45 minutes, and then you have to calculate again and you can drive again. But what you also can do, and that's the second figure, drive for 2 hours, take a break of 15 minutes, drive for 2.5 hours, and break for 30 minutes. At that time, you have 45 minutes of break, and you can drive again for 4.5 hours. These are how the breaks have to be seen. Next slide, please. So now we are talking about the daily driving time. And the daily driving time is the driving between 2 daily rest times or between a daily rest time and a weekly rest time. Now, if you say the word the daily driving time, some people are thinking about what is daily? 24 hours? It's a calendar day? Now, here in the definition, it says no, it is between 2 daily rest times or a daily rest times and a weekly rest time. That means that if you start on a Monday morning and don't have rest times until the Friday, that the daily driving time could be the whole driving time accumulated over the whole week. So that's to look at what is daily driving time. The total accumulated driving time cannot exceed 9 hours. So again, driving time is the rolling of the wheels, and the total driving time cannot exceed 9 hours. Two times in the week, and the week is also defined from Monday until Sunday evening, may be extended to 10 hours. Twice a week, 10 hours driving time. Next slide, please. Now we have the daily rest requirements. Again, daily. The drivers complete a new daily rest within 24 hours of the end of the previous daily or weekly rest. Assume that you are having a weekly rest ended at the Monday morning at 8 o'clock. Then within 24 hours after the Monday morning 8 o'clock, so the Tuesday morning 8 o'clock, you have to fulfill a daily rest. You have to take a daily rest within that period. And the daily rest of at least 11 hours have to be taken, and that's the so-called regular daily rest. And this regular daily rest can also be taken in 2 separate periods. One uninterrupted period of at least 3 hours, followed by another uninterrupted period of at least 9 hours. The drivers can also take reduced daily rest of less than 11 hours, but at least 9 hours, without interruption. And this can be done up to 3 times between any 2 weekly rest periods. That means if you have a weekly rest period ending on the Monday morning and another weekly rest period ending on the Friday, then in between you can have 9 periods, 9 hour reduced daily rest in between. Next one, please. Yes. So the weekly driving and rest times. The weekly driving time limit is 56 hours during a fixed week. So 56 hours from Monday until Sunday evening. In this figure, you see that on the driving time starts on the Sunday. But the weekly driving time is from Monday until Friday in this case. And the weekly rest should be after 6 times 24 hours, a regular or a reduced weekly record. I come back on that one. The weekly rest is after 6 times 24 hours. In addition to daily rest, the drivers must take weekly rest of at least 45 hours without an interruption. And that is the so-called regular weekly rest. A fixed week is the period between Monday morning, 0 hours, and 24 hours on Sunday. the weekly rest after 6 times of 24 hours following a weekly rest. Then a driver has to take a new weekly rest. Next slide. Now, a driver can also take a reduced weekly rest of 45 hours, but at least 24 hours without interruption. And now I have to explain the weekly rest a little bit more, because we say weekly rest and you think, hey, that's 1 week. No, in the regulation it says in every 2 weeks you should have 2 weekly rests. And that could be 2 times 45 hours or 1 45 and the next one 24 at least. This 24, that is a so-called reduced weekly rest, has to be compensated before the 3rd week that follows that week where you took this reduced weekly rest. And then the last point we already discussed about this, a regular weekly rest 45 hours without interruption or more cannot be taken inside the vehicle. And that means if for the LCVs the 561 is compulsory, then it's also not, you cannot take the regular weekly rest in the vehicle. Next slide, please. So the time periods for checking weekly rest requirements, the end of the previous weekly rest and start of a new 24-hour period at the Saturday night at 2400 hours. Then you have 6 driving times, and at the end of the 6th 24-hour period, you have to take a new weekly rest. And of course, what we said before, driving time less than 56 hours should be, not more than 56 hours. Next slide. Now this is a little bit difficult, but I already said in every consecutive 2 weeks, the driver cannot exceed 90 hours. In the first figure, you see 3 weeks. The blue part is 1 week, the second blue part is the 2nd week, and the 3rd week is coming after that. If you in the first figure see the first 2 blue parts, that means 2 weeks. It's 45 hours and 45 hours. In total 90 hours, and that's, you cannot exceed the 90 hours. That means also that in the 2nd week plus the 3rd week, it cannot be more than 90 hours. Also here you see 45 hours and 45 hours. If you see the figure below that, then you see another driving time that is starting with 8 hours, again 8 hours, 4 times 8 hours, and 2 hours is 34 hours. The 2nd week is 10, 10, 9, 9, 9, and 9. 56 hours plus 34, then it's a total of 90 hours. But also this 34 hours should be in the last week. The total driving time for the week in consideration and the week before or after should be 56 plus 34, at least not more than 90 hours. Next slide, please. And then you have the 2 weekly rest times. In any 2 consecutive fixed week, a driver must take at least 2 regular weekly rest periods or 1 regular weekly rest periods and a reduced weekly rest period of at least 24 hours. Now what you see in the first week, after the first week, he takes 24 hours rest. That's a reduced weekly rest. The next weekly rest is 45. And the 3rd weekly rest is also 45. The fourth weekly rest from Friday to Saturday is 45, but also he needs there to compensate the first reduced weekly rest of 24 hours. Okay? Next slide, please. Now, to learn more and train full explanation of this regulation, the 561, then you could look at the TRACE project, it's said before, the CORTE and ELA trainings, the guidance and enforcement documents, CORTE basics, the CORTE enforcement working group. We also always talk about the 561 there, and online content by DG Move and the ELA. So I know I can't explain everything in 15 minutes, but I think that if you look in those documents, that you can get more answers. And if you really have questions, please raise them to us and we will answer them for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hans. And definitely, I'm sure many of the participants will look into the documents after the meeting. And again, I just want to repeat that we will share all these presentations with the participants. So now I would like to move to the next speaker. And we will hear now from my neighbor here next to me, Eric Bussa from TLN Transport and Logistics Netherlands. Actually, Eric on a daily basis specializes on tachographs and driving and rest time rules. So within our members, he is one of our top experts on the topic, and he will share with us about some practical examples of recording time away from the vehicle. Eric, the floor is yours.
Okay.
You can see it. Just put it in the presentation now.
Okay, thank you. Hans, thank you very much for your explanation about the driving rest times. It shows, I think, how complex it is, and it will be a big challenge to tell it clearly to the drivers of LCVs. Next to the driving and rest times, they also have to operate the tachograph. And one of the challenges, I think, will be the manual entry. And on my first slide, the legal basis for the manual entry is partly in the 561 and partly in the 165. And in the directive 2006, you have the refer to the period which is checking during the roadside check. Finally, the 56 days, as Romain said. And I want to show in a short presentation that this will be a big challenge. I think it is now a big challenge, not for drivers who only drive on the truck, because they only maybe remove the card after the daily rest or during the weekly rest. And then it's easy to manual add the rest, but it will be complex if you do also other things besides driving a truck. So, and for the LCVs, we will see that drivers will drive in scope of the 561 and will drive out scope of the 561. So it will more and more complex. But if it's, and one of the questions in the chat was about the attachment form. The attachment form is is there still, as Oleg said. And the Commission Clarification 7 is referring to it when it's very burdensome to do the manual entry. This exists, and this will exist in the future, if I'm correct. And this can be used when it's very burdensome to do the manual entry. So you can use it now and you can use it in the future. That's a Commission Clarification 7. You can find it on the website of the Commission, and also in the Guidance Note 5 is referring to the form of attention. And that will also say if it's, for example, technical, not possible in the smart tacho or in the tacho, then you can use the form of attention. So you can still use it. But I think it would be nice if everything goes on the driver card, if it's possible. But there are several challenges to do. I summarize some of them. The first challenge will be that the manual entry varies per manufacturer. So it's different if you have a Continental VDO or a Stone Range tachograph. The way you do the manual entry is different. Then there are also different, several generations and version in transport companies from generation 1 tachograph to generation 2 version 1, that's the Smart Tacho 1, to the generation 2 version 2, the Smart Tacho 2. Different generation, different versions, different ways of working and doing how to do the manual entry. So it's not one type of tachograph. We can explain to the drivers how they should do the manual entry. Different types, and that's one of the big challenges. As you all know, the Commission was talking about it was not a guidance note, it was, I think, an implementing act about the manual entry. Planned. It was planned, but it's not coming, as I understood. And it's not coming because there are apps for your phone which you can use to do the manual entry. I hope there will be some apps. As far as I know, there's until now only one app you can use with only the newest Smart Tacho 2. So not with the older Smart Tacho 2, not with the Smart Tacho 1, and not with the digital tachograph. So you need the newest tachograph. Then you can use the app, for example. And we have also a technical issue that even you have the newest tachograph, you maybe can only add for 20 days back and not for 56 days back. That's also a challenge. The challenge for the LCV drivers will be that they do many activities inside the scope. And if you go inside the scope, you need the tachograph and it's recorded on the tachograph. If you're outside the scope, you have to add that activity later on during the manual entry as other work. And that is a big challenge. We see it now already at other companies, but it will be a bigger challenge for the LCV drivers, I think. The next big challenge is they are not used to work with the tachograph. They now don't have a tachograph. So from the 1st of July, they have to use the tachograph. And they have to know all the complex driving and rest time rules like Hans told. And the remark from Romain, that's was something good to know, because from the 1st of July, they are falling under the scope of the 561. So if you are controlled the 1st of July, you have to show them 56 days back. In my opinion, that's simple. I use the form of attention and declare that all, yeah, exactly. It's all other activities the past 8 weeks. But that's a good point, and I think we have to take that also in our mind. So they are not used to working with the tachograph, so we need a very practical training, and we discussed this also this morning. And one of my practical questions is, and that's for the enforcers, and I come to that later, should the country code be added when entering manual daily working periods? So there was no driving, only other works. You enter it manually. Should you also enter the begin country code and the end country code? I come to that later. I try to make it clear and simple. I can make a lot of examples, but to make it simple, I make 3. The first one is very easy. This is an example where the driver ends on Friday, let's say 8 o'clock. He removes his card and he starts again on Monday morning. This is very simple for the driver because he enters his card. The only thing he should do is pressing OK on time. And if he does it correct, it's very easy. Then the rest is in the whole weekend. This is not a problem. So the drivers who drive only on a truck, this is easy. But then the challenge comes when you, for example, do a day of other work. In this example, Monday you are on a truck, you are in scope, and at the evening you leave the truck, you remove your card, and then on Tuesday you do other work. From what is it, 5 till 10 or 11, and then from 12 to 4 or 5. The purple ones is out of work. What the driver should do next day, if he on Wednesday inserts his card, he should manually enter, in this case, 5 different blocks. And I don't know if somebody did it. This is possible, but it's already a kind of burdensome. And in this case, it would be very nice if we have an app in the future and you can prepare it in your app and send the information to the driver card. And then it's easy. But now I'm telling it easy. I hope we can see it soon from Continental that they show their app. I hope it is easy. So one day maybe we can do with the app. But it's going nicer when you have a whole week of other work. And in this case, the driver should, after the 4 days of other work, he should enter 17 blocks in his tachograph or in the app. I can imagine that the company says, okay, this is burdensome. I still use the form of attention. When it still exists. It would be nice, but it would be nicer, I think, if it's easy to send it by the app to the tachograph. If the app is working from the suppliers, then that would be nice. But it is not easy. And we are talking about drivers who do not work at the moment with the tachograph. So this will be a big challenge to do. And also, I think for enforcers, it is important to know, and they cannot expect, maybe they can expect, but they will see a lot of mistakes in the beginning. Because they don't know, the drivers, it will be very difficult to do it right. So it will be one big challenge to do it correct. I think a lot of drivers want to do it correct, but it will be one big challenge. And in some cases, it is impossible to manually add everything that is required. For example, if you are away 10 weeks from the vehicle and you want to enter 10 weeks of other work, that is not possible because you can only add 28 days or 56 days in the tachograph. So we need very clear instructions, training tools will be necessary. Online simulators are very important, I think. On the right is the simulator from VDO. It's very useful. I use it a lot to explain companies how it works and also drivers how it works. It's very important that we can use those kind of tools. And I hope the tool will still exist the coming year or years. And there is also a simulator of the Stone Ridge. You can find it online also. And that is very important. Then we can explain to drivers how it works. The form, attachment form, can still be used. But yeah, only when it's burdensome. But the question is when it's burdensome. Maybe 1 day is burdensome, or maybe 5 days or 10 days. I don't know. You have a question, Frank?
Mm-hmm. It's more for clarification. Because Roman is also on.
1 second, Frank.
Yeah.
So if you like, Eric, we can allow this question now, but otherwise we need to be a little bit disciplined and get that at the end. But we could do it now, but then you have to introduce yourself, Frank.
Yeah, Frank from Detail, also an old enforcer from the Danish police. But form of attestation. It's the guidance note says that it's only if it's technical, not possible, you can use it. So what you just have explained is, and you can probably not answer that, but someone else can, is that if it's technical possible with the new generation G2V2B via an app solution, you cannot use the leaflet, the letter of attestation.
The guidance note is talking about technical problems, but the clarification is not talking about technical problems. As I know, it's only talking about burdensome.
Yeah.
So then the question is, what is burdensome? When it is burdensome?
How would they interpret that?
This was my final sheet, so this was also the only thing I was asking to everybody. Are there any suggestions that can help drivers or companies? How can we make it easy?
Is it question?
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah, you
To-
have
to record.
if you speak, can you introduce yourself?
Ja,
Yeah.
Medved, just my Bohemia. I see it's easy. The whole autoscope time to record as other work. And then, before starting using tachograph, to implement to record weekly or daily rest. It's the same as we have now for bigger vehicles. I do not see any problem in this. If control authorities will accept it. But I guess they are accepting this solution until now for big vehicles.
Yeah, but then you also have a lot of infringement in your analyzing system.
Well, it's another problem. Yes, it's another problem. Analyzing systems, programs, yes. Yes, I agree. But they will be the same for this because I expect that the driving, let's say domestically, will be autoscope. Will be autoscope. Using card or not, it will be voluntary. So it means that all these analyzing programs will have problem.
So
Definitely. And software of tachographs as well. Well, that's what.
it seems it's a very interesting question that you raised, Frank. So that I would like to ask Hans, because Frank, you are a former police officer, but currently you are working for our member, which is representing transport operators in Denmark. But I would like to ask Hans, as he is a current, currently working with CORTE. So Hans, what is your interpretation on that? What would be your answer?
Yes, if we talk about these LCVs, if you have an LCV and you do international work, then you need to install and use a smart tachograph. Now, in between or after this international journey, you do national journeys. But the tachograph is still in. Why shouldn't you put your card in and use it? Because all the work you do during the week in that LCV nationally should also be recorded. Now, what is easier than put your card in and record it?
You're fully correct, Hans, but only they are not driving on vehicles with a tachograph. There are only a lot of vehicles which are below the 2,500 kilograms, which don't have a tachograph. So in some cases you are right, and you can use the driver card and set the tachograph on autoscope, but in some cases they don't have a tachograph.
Yeah, okay. I think we shouldn't debate further on that because obviously there will be some requests for official questions, clarification and answers from the European Commission. So when I hear people having different opinions, I say, okay, great. So we have to ask the Commission to say something officially.
Luca,
yes,
just one point. Sorry for interrupt, but and also to for Hans and other enforcers to know that I think that the van operators, they will only invest in tachograph in the vans who go international. So the out of scope scenario, which we can see in trucks, I don't think we can find that in vans, not at least for the first 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So drivers will jump to other vans. So that means they will not be able to record out of scope when they are driving national.
Yeah.
So I think this is important because it's a huge investment for the van owners what they are facing.
I see there are many questions and opinions also in the chat, but because our next speaker is also an enforcer, I think us first to move to this last presentation and then pick up the questions and come back perhaps even on this topic or on other topics, because again there are also other questions we have in the chat. So I would like to move now to the last presentation of this session, which is on posting of drivers and what should be known regarding LCVs. And the presentation is by Artur Toczko, Road Transport Inspector in the Provincial Road Transport Inspectorate in Białystok.
Yeah, I know it's extremely difficult to pronounce it. Good afternoon. My name is Artur Toczko. As I was introduced, I'm a road transport inspector that actually walks on the road on a daily basis. So before I will dive into the topic of posting of drivers, let me quickly answer how would I perceive a driver of a LCV when he did his manual entry in a proper way. We will treat those drivers as any other drivers. Also, the driver doesn't matter if it's from a large truck or a small LCV. The tachograph is the same. The entry of a manual recording is exactly the same, and they have to be trained how to do so. During the roadside check, they are obliged to prove their activity of the past 56 days. If it's recorded on the card, that's the best solution for us because we've got the software for quick analysis of it. If they are unable to do so for some reason like a technical issue that he wasn't able to do so because he didn't know how to do it, we suggest them, if you are still in your base, go back to the office and ask for the written confirmation of your activity. Because if you've got a question mark on your card, there is a loop or a whole missing data on the card, that's an infringement, and both the driver and the operator might be punished for that. Okay, so let me quickly share my presentation. I can see. 1 second. Okay, can you see it? Can you see the presentation?
Yes, now we can, yes.
Okay. Okay, so as Romano mentioned, the directive 2025-1057 was a part of a so-called mobility package, and it's also named as a lex specialis because it specifies the certain rules for one category of workers, drivers in international transport. So the directive clarifies and unifies the rules set to posting of those workers throughout the European Union. So since 2022, all member states supposed to transpose this directive into the national legislation, because the directive is not actually the law that is a legal base for enforcement for enforcement bodies. That's the national legislation, because the directive only specifies how the member state have to achieve certain goals. So it is impossible for operators to know the national legislation related to posting of drivers from all 27 member states, and there is no reason for that. If you know what are the requirements in the directive, that's supposed to be enough, because the member states transposed it in a proper way, so the rules are the same, even though the legal base might be different because we operate in different member states. So for 3.5 years already, we enforce those rules from operators that use large vehicles, goods vehicles, and also vehicles designed for carriage of more than 10 or more passengers, so buses and coaches. So we are experienced, so you don't have to be afraid that enforcer won't know much about the posting rules. He will know exactly what rules are in place and if the driver is in scope of posting or not. And as you know, since 1st of July next year, there will be an extension of those rules onto the drivers that are engaged in international carriage using vehicles with a permissible laden mass between 2.5 and 3.5 tons. So it might look like it's a similar extension of the scope, like in a field of tachograph, but it's not exactly, the deadline is exactly the same, but it may happen that you will be required to install a tachograph, but the driver won't be in scope of posting rules anyway, because he will be engaged in certain international operations that will be exempt from posting requirements. So the deadline is the same, but it does not necessarily mean that both rules you have to follow. Sometimes the driver won't be required to be declared as posted. So only if the driver is an employee of the operator, the lex specialis rules are applicable. And let me quickly answer to the question that appeared on the chat. There was a question if the operator had to still declare the driver as posted through national systems like SIPSI or MILOC in Germany. The answer is those systems, those national systems, won't disappear from 1st of July, but if your driver is an employee of the operator, only rules set in the Lex Specialis directive will be applicable to this driver. So the national system will exist, but they will take care only on workers from other sectors, or if your driver is not your employee, it's a intra-group posting situation, or it's a driver hired through a temporary work agency, that national system might be still applicable to this driver. Okay, so depends what kind of operation the driver is engaging. He might be posted or might be not. So let's say a few words about the posting situations. Cabotage, of course, so a carriage that starts and ends within one member state, and that state is not a member state of establishment of the operator. In that situation, the driver is posted, so he has to earn at least as much as the driver from the host member states. If the remuneration is higher in the member state of establishment, the higher one is applicable to this driver. Also, drivers engaged in a cross-trade operation are considered as posted. So the operation that starts and ends in two separate member states, and none of those member states are the member state of the establishment, that's a cross-trade operation. But be careful, the phrase cross-trade operation is not taken from the Lex Specialis directive or the national law related to posting. There will be phrased like international operation other than bilateral. But to quick understanding, the cross-trade, that means that there is crossing of the border, and none of these both countries where the operation starts and ends is a country of establishment of the operator. Also, certain initial and final legs of combined transport might be a posting situation. So if this initial leg has a character of a cross-trade operation or cabotage operation, that is a posting situation. And similarly, the final road leg of the combined transport may have also character of a cross-trade or cabotage. That's a posting situation. Certain unladen journeys may also require the driver to be declared as posted if the operation that is a laden journey towards the loading point for a cabotage operation, for example, that empty stretch is also a posting situation. Okay, certain situations when the driver will be engaged in international transport, so the tachograph is required, but it won't trigger the obligation for posting of the driver. Bilateral operation. So if the operation starts in the member state of the establishment or ends there, that's a bilateral operation. Doesn't matter if the other end of the operation is in a member state or a third country. If if at the one end of the journey is a member state of establishment, such operation is perceived as a bilateral operation. The declaration of the driver as posted is not required. It's not a posting situation. Transit doesn't matter if it's in a laden or unladen state. Transit through a member state does not require the driver to be posted, to be declared as posted. And similarly, like on the previous slide, initial or final leg might have a character of a bilateral operation. Such operation is not perceived as a posting situation. And again, one more time, unladen journeys. Unladen journey that precedes the operation that is exempt from posting, that precedes bilateral operation, for example. Such unladen journey is not a posting situation. Also, a return of an empty vehicle back to the member state of the establishment is not a posting situation. Although it is not directly stated in the law, there are clarifications given to us by the DG MOVE that states that operation with a load defines if the operation just before that it is a posting situation or not. Also, the law says that there are possibilities to perform certain cross-trade operations. And as I say, cross-trade operation as a rule is a posting situation. But if you perform a cross-trade operation in a context of a bilateral operation, certain limited activities related to that cross-trade operation won't trigger the obligation to declare the driver as posted. So it is possible to perform certain cross-trade operations, and it won't trigger the obligation to post the driver. And so these are the so-called 1+1 and 0+2 rules. So one cross-trade operation during outgoing bilateral operation that will be exempt. Then returning back to the member state, operator is allowed to perform one cross-trade operation that will be exempted from posting obligation. If you want to perform more cross-trade operations during the bilateral operation, okay, that's fine, it is allowed, but the further operation will trigger the obligation to post the driver. And also 0+2 rule, if no cross-trade operations are performed during outgoing bilateral operation, the limit is somehow moved to the returning journey. During a returning bilateral operation, the operator may perform up to 2 cross-trade operations that will be exempted from posting rules. Okay, there are certain requirements for you as operators before posting of the driver. You have to set up an account on a road transport posting declaration portal. Of course, it's free of charge, and so you have to enter some credential, open an account, enter a list of drivers, and you may create a posting declaration. You may declare the drivers to be posted to certain countries, and it is not required to declare the drivers to post it to all member states. Actually, I wouldn't advise that because if you do not plan to perform operation in certain member state, don't do so, because you may be asked for proving the operations and the remuneration paid to the driver, even if you did not perform any operations there. So it's better to avoid additional administrative burden. Only declare the drivers to the countries that you actually perform the operation. In case you will receive a new order for new operation that you did not predict before, it is super quick. You may declare the driver as posted just before he enters the crosses the border with that not predicted member state. And they inverted in the interface of their own transport posting declaration portal, each in all EU languages, and it's on www.postingdeclaration.eu. So it's very intuitive and it's super easy to use. So when you declare the driver as posted, he have to have a posting declaration in hand or on his mobile phone, so both forms, or printed one and the electronic on his mobile is allowed during the roadside check. So at this stage, we, the enforcers, do not check the remuneration yet because it's too early. At this stage, only the posting declaration is required, evidence of transport operation performed in the host member state, but also sometimes in other member states, because it may affect the assessment of the enforcer if there is a posting requirement or not. Also, tachograph records are required during the roadside check, but those usually the enforcer will collect themselves by downloading the data from the tachograph and the driver's card. After the posting, you may expect that the member state where you declare the driver as posted may ask you through the road transport posting declaration portal. So the same portal you prepared the posting declaration, throughout the same interface, the authority in the member state where you, the host member state, will contact you and may ask for the documentation in relation to remuneration of the driver. So much more documents at this stage. So pay slips, proof of payments, again, tachograph records, evidence of transport operations, so consignment notes, and employment contract. Okay. So as it is extremely difficult to explain in detail everything related to posting of drivers within such short time I've been given, I suggest you may also take a look on the website of the European Commission. There are so-called question and answers related to the posting of drivers and also posting scenarios. And it's, of course, available in all EU languages. So thank you for having me. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Arthur. And I see there is a very intense activity in the chat with statements, questions, answers already. So because we are approaching the end of the event, I would like then to move to the conclusions, but the conclusions are just not all of them just brief conclusions, but we have some very important speakers also in this section. And I would like first to give the floor to Ivona Kaspczyk-Sowa, Senior Labor Mobility Officer at the European Labour Authority. We have already heard her colleague from the European Labour Authority speaking in the first session, but now this is a kind of a wrap-up of the whole event. So Ivona, the floor is yours. What are your conclusions after all this rich discussion? You are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Well, I'm sure everyone would rather, hear the important questions from the chat than just the concluding remarks. But I am very impressed also by what I saw in the chat. And my first conclusion after this event would be that we don't just need a general session, but rather like a masterclass on how to interpret, the situation for LCVs vis-a-vis Regulation 561. So I'm looking at Hans as well and other colleagues who could maybe, sit together and prepare that, because there are quite concrete questions there as well. I would like you to maybe tell you what we also analyzed in ELA ahead of this meeting, but not only, like preparing ourselves for July. And we, as you know, ELA is there to support main stakeholders in the picture, from the driver himself to, commission on the other side. In a sense, we're here for the member states, but authorities, but also drivers, operators, and the commission. And we, of course, in order to understand where to step in, we want to analyze some data, some statistics. So when it comes to posting, because that's probably the added value of ELA, where we try to, bring together the two worlds of transport and labor and analyze the two, pieces of legislation together. And especially when it comes to posting in road transport, it is important to try to understand how many of the operators are actually engaged in posting and what is the real posting, on the road. So we do have some data, but we know that posting declarations might not reflect the real number of postings. So when we tried to understand what could be the potential numbers in case of LCVs, we realized that we would need to differentiate the posting declarations also in the RTPD portal. Because at this stage, when you create a profile as an operator in RTPD portal, you are not asked whether you are, a carrier exercising the international transport solely by the means of LCVs, but, there's a general, let's say, profile. So we have also spoken with colleagues from the European Commission whether that differentiation in the RTPD wouldn't be necessary in order to then have data on how many LCVs operators actually submitted declarations, how many drivers of LCVs we do have as posted drivers. So we would probably need to, reflect that in the RTPD portal. So that's the first thing that we are looking at. We try to analyze also the numbers that are available when it comes to the number of hauliers possessing community license, and also the number of those who only do international transport solely by means of LCVs. It seems that that's the 10%, according to the statistics we have from 2021-2022. And if you take a look at these statistics, it seems that, for example, one country represents 50% of all of the community license released for LCVs in international transport. So we see that probably we have a target audience, which is the biggest one in one country. You see, like 50% of our audience could be placed. This is actually Romania. So we tried to, prepare ourselves where to go, what is our target audience, and also how these new numbers of LCVs with tachograph will impact enforcement practices. So we know that we heard only some countries are preparing themselves to have more inspectors, but most of the member states will have the same number of inspectors, but a bigger audience when it comes to the check of driving and rest time and posting. So that means that we are risking that the heavy vehicles will be either checked less because you will have to check more LCVs. I mean, there's only as much as you can do at the roadside. So we wouldn't like to see less enforcement of heavy vehicles, obviously. So we're trying to sensitize, member states on these issues because the numbers are also big on the LCV side. What probably you would be more, able to answer, but our question internally is how much there is an awareness among the LCV operators about the, obligation to have a tachograph, which we see it's actually growing, and probably there is a big, awareness. But the question is, what about awareness about posting? Because that's not automatically, natural that about having, obligation to have a tachograph, that you automatically know about the obligation to create a portal at the RTPD. So what we think is that our role probably would be to really, really raise awareness about posting obligations that come with this. And of course, it is not all that simple. We all know it. So we do still have few categories of drivers that do not come in scope of the lex specialis. So if we have in front of us a driver who is actually employed by a temporary employment agency, the slide that Artur was presenting with one of his last slides with the green, lines saying what is not posting according to lex specialis, all this slide would be gone, because practically under, you know, the normal directive for posting, every kind of operations for a driver employed by temporary employment agency would be posting. So in this sense, we think there is a lot to be done on awareness raising, on posting rules. That for sure, we are ready to step in and do a lot of, you know, capacity building and trainings. But we also noticed one important thing, and I would probably, on my, you know, analysis conclude here, is that who is at the roadside are mostly transport inspectors and police. For transport inspectors and police, posting is not at the top priority of what they're doing. The road safety is the top priority. So we could expect that, you know, whenever the complications are there, you know, when it comes to understanding what posting is or understanding who is posted, that will have an impact on enforcement if the authorities don't understand precisely, you know, whom they have in front of them. And that is, of course, also difficult for the operators themselves to differentiate if they have few drivers who are employed directly and few drivers from a temporary employment agency, for example. They would have few different situations of posting in their own company. So you see, these are, I think, at this stage, difficult scenarios that we are trying to grasp and make it simple, because I don't want to conclude with, you know, a negative, let's say, picture. But with all this in mind, we have started, of course, to plan our activities for next year, and Ivan showed you, you know, except for the campaign and the online event in December, we think that next year we will try to hold a big event also on the occasion of the 1st of July 2026, in order to raise awareness, attract attention to the new rules. So I'm telling it already now, so you can plan your holidays next year precisely. Don't tell us if we didn't tell you. And yes, and we would like to, you know, to bring together the two worlds. So yes, remind about tachograph, but especially inform about posting obligations that come with that. So that is our plan, and we're glad to do it all together. So thank you for inviting me also here.
Thank you very much, Ivana. And actually, you reminded me of a very, let's say, complex time we had when the posting, the posting became applicable, the posting obligations became applicable, and nobody was familiar with the system. And then the Commission had to start a process of train the trainers, and then it was very, very complicated. But actually now we are in a similar situation, because unless and of course there may be some companies that do heavy duty transport, so transport of goods with heavy duty vehicles, and they may already be familiar with the system and the IMI system. But for those who do entirely LCVs, they don't know what the IMI system is. And when I remember all the questions and all the complications which we had at the time, until everybody became clear with what was the IMI and how it worked, I think we need to think about that too. How can we together, as I said, it's about the partnership, work in order to make sure they know what the IMI is. I mean, alongside and leaving aside all the other rules, driving and rest time and so on. So thank you very much. And now I'll pass the floor to our last speaker today. This is Remy Russotto, the CEO of CORTE. And Remy, I know you are you have some very interesting activity on this, but unfortunately we are running a little bit out of time for the whole of the presentation. As I said before, the presentations will all be shared with the participants. So if you can just summarize really like the very final few concluding remarks, what you have in that presentation, but without going through all of it. And again, with the knowledge that that presentation will be shared with all of the participants anyway.
Yes, Raluca, thank you very much. So yes, no worries. Anyway, the presentation is just it's 3 slides. So in fact, the content is more with Hans, Arthur, and then all the other documents we have. But I think just to conclude, this was the idea. I think I would like to thank you, Oleg and you, for for organizing this, because and when I see the numbers also of people in the room, this is also a good sign. And I've looked at the names also, so there are a lot of people. Some people are new, which is in fact the main thing the main challenge I think that we have is to create what we call let's say, a LCV community. It's a strange wording, but anyway, is to make sure that we identify the operators and drivers of LCVs so that they become part of of these meetings, of all sorts of initiatives where they can get the information, be aware, and get also the elements of simplification, of explanations for them to know what are the obligations. And on the other side, of course, for the enforcers that we represent in CORTE, together with other entities, and Yaru also is a member of CORTE, that the enforcers know also how to address very specific questions relating to LCV. So this is the main point I want to make. There are 2 points. The first is our main challenge is still up until July, but even after, to make sure that 50%, 80%, hopefully 100% of this so-called community that has LCVs engaged in international transport is aware and participates to different efforts, including the one you are doing here, but also the ones that DG Move is doing, ELA is doing, and we're working a lot with both and you. And then in CORTE also what we're doing, this is very simply put, we have a number of initiatives with our members. And one is to create, to simply put again, recommendations and documents that explain the legislation. So we're building now one that will be finalized soon on LCVs that says to LCV owners, drivers, but also to enforcers, what are the new obligations for these vehicles and drivers, to understand them better. And I think if I've read well the questions that were put in the chat, 90% or more of these questions are in fact answered in this CORTE Basics, we call it, CORTE Basic on LCV. So this is sort of an example of what we're trying to do also in CORTE, to answer very direct operational questions that the LCV drivers owners will have, and that the enforcers will need to know to make the enforcements. So that's the 2 things: is build the audience, let's say, make sure that the community is aware and has access to all sorts of material and is trained. And then on our side, continue to produce documents that respond to the very precise questions, such as the ones that were put in the chat today. So yes, so this is it. So thank you very much, and thank you also to Hans and Arthur, who also help a lot in the field together with Ella. They're the main also experts and trainers in the trainings that we organize together. So thank you for doing this again today for a different audience. Thank you, Raluca.
We thank you, Remy, and also for the great work that you are doing. And now I'm supposed to kind of summarize everything, and I have it here written in my notes, summarize the main lessons from the debate. So I tried to think about the lessons of the debate, but I only have a to-do list, basically for me and for others. So we can call that lessons as well. So obviously there on the IRU side, what we will do, we will start, we will build up a training module, and then we will do training with our members, and then at their turn they will have to well, it's their choice, of course, but they can do training directly with transport operators in their national languages and in their countries, like a full module, because just 1 hour and a half or 2 hours, it won't be enough for full preparation, when we think that truck drivers have hours and hours and hours of training, including on the rules, and LCV drivers don't have anything. So definitely these modules are absolutely necessary. But then starting from what Ivona was saying, and these systems, the IMI for the posting, but also other rules, probably it would be very, very helpful if ELA could help with some regional workshops, as they have done before on the Mobility Package 1 in national languages. You already said, Ivona, there is one target country which already has 50%. So if you could do a regional workshop there, and all these operators, if they had access to all this information, including explaining them, because you have the biggest quantity, let's say, of information together with DG Grow, like familiarizing them with the IMI and the system and everything. That would be very helpful. Number three, obviously, there were a lot of questions and answers in the chat, and I say also answers, but not to forget, none of these answers is official. Okay, some of the things may be very obvious if you just read the law, but some of the, as we heard, some of the things are interpretation, and none of our interpretations are official. Now, of course, the only official one is the Court of Justice, but nonetheless, if we had the European Commission replying to some of these questions officially through its legal service, as they have done before on several aspects of the mobility package one, that would be very helpful for the market. So we will gather all these question and invitation to all of you to send us your questions. We'll centralize them, and then we'll ask the Commission to ask officially. So that's my conclusion. My conclusion is to-do list, as I said. So we have a big work ahead also on our side. And of course, the biggest work is on transport operators and the drivers. So with this in mind, I would like to thank very much to our speakers and our participants today. And also to our very close partners, the Court, the European Labour Authority, the European Commission, and also they haven't spoken today, but also the trade unions, because we also need the drivers embarked in all this process. And I would also like to give special thanks to my colleague Oleg for putting everything together. Thank you very much. Have a great day and a successful transition. Thank you.